I am super excited about today's topic. Let me get this set up over here real quick so we can see what's going on. Awesome. Yeah, so today I'm really excited to talk to you about this called the uses and abuses of apologetics. It's something that actually has been on my mind for a little bit now. I've seen a lot of people online, and especially with our account, our Reaching Japan account on Instagram, we grew by like 5,000 people last year. And some of the engagement that we were getting on it was a little, I don't know, not even questionable. Questionable is not the right word. It was concerning. I think that would be the right word. Concerning. We were concerned about the kinds of interaction that we were getting from people who probably are well-meaning, but have kind of missed the mark. And so I do not have screenshots of the interactions because I want to keep it low-key. But I want to talk to you about the uses and abuses of apologetics and how you might actually inadvertently be hindering the cause of evangelism, especially in Japan. So a little bit of backstory. Last year, we posted some stuff on our social, and it kind of blew up. And our Reaching Japan account is mainly targeting people in the U.S., trying to raise awareness, trying to help people understand what Japan is like, and get a better idea of what things look like here on the ground. So we have this, and we're pushing out stuff to our social media, but it's the internet, and the way the algorithm works, sometimes people just people in Japan, Japanese people pick up on it as well. And so we have had a mix of people engage with our contents: Christians, unbelievers, Japanese unbelievers, and a whole mix. And as I was watching the interactions on these, I noticed a lot of people got pretty aggressive and, very well-meaning people, but actually it was hurting the cause. And so we're going to talk through that a little bit today, because I think some people think they're helping and they're not. So we're going to talk about a lot of what not to do, and then have some ideas about what to do. So first, we need to talk about what apologetics is. What is apologetics? It's not apologizing, right? If you're into the apologetics scene, there's a lot of arguments. There was actually recently a really good debate that I heard about, but I'm not going to get into that. But apologetics is making a reasonable defense of the faith. And so it's talking about, it's not about winning arguments. It's not about attacking beliefs or even proving your superiority. It's a defense. But a lot of times what I see online is people are making an attack. And instead of, fighting, arguing, tearing down, it's really trying to create some understanding, respectful dialogue, and genuine evangelism. And we're going to be talking about that today, because we see a lot of this going on, and it's very sad for me to watch, because I kind of have a foot in both worlds. I grew up here, I live here, I work here, I understand the Japanese mentality a little bit more, and then I see Westerners, people in the U.S., coming at this with like a Western apologetics mindset, and whoo, man, it's very cringy to me. So we want to talk about that. But as we're going through this, could you, if you were watching this, drop in the comments a time when maybe you don't, but a time when you had an argument with somebody online. Tell us about it. I wanna hear about those. An experience, especially maybe about a confrontation, or something about Christianity or religious related. Maybe there was it just didn't resolve. It turned ugly. Just kind of you don't need to name names, but just say one time I had this happen or that happen. I want to hear about that, and maybe talk about that a little bit as well. So if you have had that kind of experience, please let us know in the comments, and we'll be looking through those later and talking through that a little bit as well. One of the most common pitfalls that people who come from a Western apologetics, they're not really doing apologetics, but that people who think they're doing apologetics do, is they have this "the truth hurts" mentality. And it is true that the truth sometimes hurts, and it's hurts to be wrong. But it's this like, because I care about you getting saved, because I care about you coming to Jesus, I don't want you to die and go to hell, I can be ugly about how I talk to you. And being ugly to someone and hurting them that way is not the truth hurts. That is, you are hurting people. Speaking the truth, speaking truthfully, treating people versus treating people unkindly are two very different things. And I was noticing this on some of our threads where a lot of people, not our threads, like we're not on Instagram threads, we're not that advanced, but a lot of people, it starts out this and then starts out, someone will say something and someone say, well, you don't know about this. And then they maybe unbeliever would come back with something and then quickly turns into an attack on those people. It's like, well, if you knew this, then if you were not stupid, it's like, whoa, calm down. Like we're not talking about beliefs and ideas now. We're just like attacking each other, and it devolves quickly. And a lot of times, the common pitfalls, again, there's this need to be right. People are like, I am right, and I have to prove it to you, and I must make you agree with me. And it's most of the time, like 99.999% of the time, no one trusted Christ because of an online argument. Think about that for a second. Nobody that you argue with online is probably going to get saved. Like, when you think about that, it's like, man, arguing about this topic, anything, but no one has ever gone into an online argument and come out going, oh, man, they treated me like dirt. I think I'm wrong. I think they're right. That never ever happens. And the other thing I see is a lot of times people assume that they know what the other person believes. Like, well, you're Buddhist, so this, or you're Shinto, so that. And the other person like, well, I'm not sure that that's what I believe. That's not actually what I believe, but okay, you don't know what you're talking about. And so the conversation quickly deteriorates as well. So these are some really bad things that I have seen happen. And another thing is, especially when we've seen Americans and Westerners talking with Japanese people on our content, because I mentioned that the algorithm pushes our stuff out there, and so there's like people that are interested in like spiritual stuff and shrines over here, and then they see like we're talking about a shrine, and so our stuff gets fed to them through the algorithm, and they're like, what? And then like the Western people jump on, and they're talking to the Japanese people in English. But I watch the conversation and people are talking past each other. It is so crazy. I see what the Americans are saying. I see what the Japanese person is saying. And they're literally not on the same wavelength because you don't understand how they think, what their mindset is about God or the Bible or about Christianity. So please, 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 please be careful, especially when you're crossing borders. And trying to talk to people and share truth. Maybe you are being respectful, but the presuppositions that people hold onto are very, very different. And so all that to say, one, don't be that guy. Don't be the guy that's fighting or arguing or attacking people. That is not apologetics. That is not providing a reasonable defense for the faith. Now, there is a favorite Bible verse that people have. It's 1 Peter 3:15, and it's the verse that says, be ready to give an answer. And this is probably one of the most common verses that's used by people to talk about giving a defense, apologetics. The original Greek word talks about apologetics, apologizing. And so people are like, yes, I'm making a defense for the faith, and I'm planting a flag, and I'm going to fight everybody online in the comments section. Look at the context of that verse. There's a lot to be said. 1 Peter 3, verses 14 through 16. The whole book of 1 Peter is actually talking to Christians who are being persecuted for their faith. And the whole idea is that you are a believer, you are a follower of Jesus, and the world, the people who do not follow Jesus, are doing bad things to you, but you stand there and you take it, and the prime example that's given to us is Jesus. Jesus, they spit on him, they beat him, they slap his face, they nail him to a cross, and he doesn't fight back. He doesn't fight back. He's standing in front of Pilate, he's being falsely accused, and he doesn't fight back. And it says, that's our example. And then you get to 1 Peter 3, and it says, we are going to be persecuted and hated and all these things. And then 1 Peter 3, I've got it pulled up here actually, 3 verse 15, it says, sanctify the Lord God in your hearts and be ready to give an answer to every man that asks you a reason of the hope that is in you. A lot of times we're answering questions when people have not asked. And we are attacking and going on the offense. They have not asked. The way this is framed, it's saying, okay, this person is being persecuted as a Christian. They are spoken ill of. But in all of that, he says, you live a good life. You are a good person in spite of all this. You're not turning sour. You're not becoming bitter. You're not throwing anybody under the bus. You are taking it. And then someone goes, why are you doing this? Why do you put up with this? This is not normal. Could you tell me? And you say, I have hope. Let me tell you about Jesus. And this is why I'm following Jesus. That is where this goes. But so often what people think they're doing with apologetics is they are just attacking people and saying, this is why Christianity is true. And they did not ask. They did not ask. Now, I'm not saying that we don't evangelize if nobody's asking. Our friends here know that we're Christians, and a lot of times we are building relational trust before we can have those deeper conversations. It takes a long time here in Japan, and I think a lot of times even in the States, you quickly jump past that. Brandon, Sheen, are you able to save or post this live? This is good. This is actually going live. It's going to be on our YouTube as well, so it'll be available over there on our YouTube channel for later. But a lot of times people are like attacking, but they're like, no, let's look at Jesus, our example, and how would Jesus engage this person? Because a lot of times when the conversation devolves into personal attacks and fighting, that is the opposite of what Jesus did. And we are coming across as a self-righteous religious person. That's what the people online see. And so you got to be careful with that. And Jesus had a very low tolerance for self-righteous religious people. So a lot of times I watch these conversations and I'm going, man, this is the exact opposite of what Jesus wants us to do. Now, what I'm not saying is that you don't engage in conversation, you just completely disengage from the internet and just let it go wild. We're going to talk about what to do in a minute. But attacking, instead of saying, here's my righteous life, and we're not like broadcast, like I'm a righteous person, but like people see your life and they go, that's not normal. And that is a spirit-empowered life that becomes attractive. And that is when we apologize. Apologetics. Defend the faith. Give a reasonable explanation for why we do what we do. The other thing is, in verse 15, it says, with meekness and fear. This is how we do apologetics. It's respectful, it's gracious, and we're not trampling on anybody. They're like, yes, I am a Christian. I was passed up on a promotion. I don't go party on the weekends, and all these things happen, but I follow Jesus, and here's why. And I believe that Jesus has done this for me, and this is why I'm choosing to follow this way. Like, not, well, if you knew the truth, you would be living like me too. Like, whoa! Calm down, calm down. So, with meekness, with grace, humility, humbly approaching these conversations. Because a lot of times, the Christians that I see online who are arguing, there is this mentality of like, I have the truth. And it is the truth. I'm not saying there are multiple truths. There's one truth, but it's like, I have the truth, and because I have the truth, I am superior to you. I think it was Karen Newhoff, someone on his podcast said people, they get saved, and then they are no longer able, become people who would no longer be able to evangelize their unsaved version of themselves. Become so ugly. We have become so we lack empathy and understanding what those people have walked through. The other thing, Colossians chapter 4, Verse 6 says, "Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer every man." Graceful speech. Is your speech graceful when you're engaging with people, especially online? Because it's very easy to read bad intent into people's comments. I very quickly do this too. And so you quickly read it and it's like, well, they're attacking me, but maybe they were not. Maybe they were just stating something that was off the cuff remark, but it was not an attack, but you take it personally and then you attack back. And like it's not seasoned. I know right now if you say be something salty, it's not good, but like don't be that kind of salty. But is the way you're responding and engaging a top-down, I'm better than you, I'm more righteous than you, or is it this graceful, humble way approaching this conversation? Now, there are people, I run into these people too, so don't worry, that no matter what you say, they're just going to say nonsense. They're going to talk smack. Have fun. Now, what I'm saying is, know when to engage and know when to stop. And I think that is one of the other weaknesses that a lot of Westerners have in Japan, especially because Japan is like, keep the peace, even if it's on the surface. So if you try to keep pushing, a lot of Japanese people will just be like, and slow down. And you're like, but it's like this, but it's like this. And they're like, okay, yeah. But a lot of times the conversation needs to be an ongoing conversation, and maybe they haven't been exposed to these ideas before. And there's actually a Buddhist cult in Japan called Soka Gakkai. They have a little bit of political power. They are very popular among the poorer classes here. And in the old days, they did this thing called shakubuku, which is basically they would sit down, and they would like verbally like try to break you until you would confess to their beliefs. Most people don't like that. And that's a Buddhist organization. How much more so a Christian a follower of Jesus trying to do this, trying to beat somebody over the head with a Bible or with strong arguments. People are like, you might be right, but I feel like dirt right now, so I don't want to have anything to do with this. And they'll back way down. So please, please, please be careful. And the other one that I wanted to share with you is Proverbs 18. Proverbs 18, because a lot of times when people are engaging online, I see this. People make assumptions about the other person on the other side of the comment. He that answers a matter before he hears it, it is his folly and shame unto him. Have you actually heard and understood the other person, where they're at, what they're saying, where they are coming from? If you are answering before you actually hear the matter, if they say something and you don't figure out what they're really saying and you just assume what they're saying, you are in for a lot of trouble. It will be your folly, Christian, your folly, your shame, and that shame, that folly is hurting the cause of Christ, not only in the States, but also in Japan. So please, 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 for the love of God, ask a bunch of questions. So that's just going to kind of segue into our next thing, what you can do. Because we talked about what not to do, right? Like, don't do this, don't do that. So first off, if somebody says something, figure out why they think that. And that always starts by asking questions. And there's different ways to ask questions. There's the I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm trying to prove that I'm right, you're wrong. And so there's the question with a little bit of edge, right? Like, why are you so stupid? That's a question, but that does not help engage in conversation. Like, well, I had somebody who was like, most churches in Japan have a bunch of foreigners. Okay. If you say that, I had someone say, I'm like, okay, interesting. Could you maybe tell me how many churches you visited? What kind of churches were those? Where are those churches? Because that person had visited a few in Japan, and most of them had been Brazilian congregations. So in their perspective, in their experience, churches in Japan are made up of foreigners. And I was like, well, actually, ours has a lot of Japanese people. But that was that person's perspective, and it was, in a sense, valid for them. If I said, no, you're wrong, they're like, but the ones I've been to have all been that. Then we start talking past each other and say, okay, I understand your perspective has been this, and your experience has been this, and that is true. But that doesn't mean that applies to everybody. But for that moment, they believed that their perspective was true, and it was in a limited scope. So figure out where they're coming from. Ask genuine questions. Like, okay, so could you tell me, and this is not even to win an argument yet, I need to understand what that person is thinking, what that person is saying. So, for example, in Colossians 4:6, it says that you may know how you ought to answer every man. And a lot of times apologetics, we kind of step away from the people, and we have these very well-constructed, at least we think, well-constructed arguments for these belief systems. And that's good, but how are you supposed to answer each individual? Changes. You can't copy and paste apologetics answers into comment threads and expect to get through to people. So ask genuine questions. Could you tell me about this? Could you tell me what leads you to believe this? What leads you to think that? My assumption is that the person on the other side making that comment is an intelligent person made in the image of God, who God loves, and they have a brain and they're using it to think. Now, there are exceptions. Most of the time, they have been led to believe something because of some experience or because of something somebody has told them, and they believe that source to be credible. Or maybe it's just an assumption. But by asking questions, you can dig down and say, okay, how did we get there? What leads you to this idea? And then say, okay, well, have you thought about this? What about this? We start, what about this other perspective? Have you considered this other way of thinking about it? Or I have had this experience. Because if you can share that, then they can't negate your experience. Most of the time people will say, will not say your experience was invalid. But a lot of times Christians will say, yeah, I've got the truth, so your experience was invalid. So be careful. Say, okay, maybe you did have that experience. Now let's kind of take a look at this. Have some empathy too. So a lot of times what I try to do is I ask people to switch roles. I want you to imagine a person from an Islamic background talking about Muhammad, and you as a Christian, you engage with something and they say, but Muhammad says this and the Quran says this and boom, boom, boom. You're like, whoa, I don't even believe that stuff. Like, calm down. You're crazy. That's the way I think most people would think that. Now, if you're of an Islamic faith, please understand that. I'm just trying to help people understand. I'm not saying that's you, but I'm mainly talking to Christians here, and a lot of Christians don't understand that you got to be nice. So please be nice. Now, through this, though, there are some tough questions that you are going to have to be able to answer once you get to Japan. So this goes kind of more into the actual apologetics and providing a defense for what you believe, and moving beyond just like, becoming a keyboard warrior. That's what we call them, keyboard warriors. People who just type angry comments back and forth as a defense of the faith. It's actually attack, and it's not helping anybody. You need to have a reasonable explanation for some pretty tough conversations. And some of these you guys might unfollow me for, but that's okay. It's actual issues that we deal with. So here we go. One, violence in the Old Testament. Why was it okay? Why did God kill all those people? That's something that we face a lot of times. And, why did I literally had somebody who was coming to church and stopped coming and said, I can't believe that God would flood the entire earth and kill everybody. That's not nice. How are you going to answer that? How are you going to answer that with love and compassion, but mixed with truth and righteousness? This is the thing. Jesus was the perfect balance between grace and truth, right? He's gracious. People listen to him in the gracious words, but then he also speaks the truth. So it's not like truth hurts, pow, 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 pow. If you're a self-righteous religious person, then low tolerance. But how are you going to explain that? Think through that. What about the discrepancies? Like, God in the Old Testament, he's killing everybody, and then Jesus love, love, love. Those don't seem to be the same. How do we reconcile those? And then we have to talk about historical and present abuse. A lot of the abuse that has happened in Christian circles hasn't really made its way. That information hasn't made its way here. There's some, but for example, like, okay, so the Christians, the Crusades, they went and killed a bunch of people. What about that? Like, they're kind of violent. Like, now you and I, we're 800 plus years removed from the Crusades and all of that, and so like that's the Europeans in Europe doing something. They're kind of like the Catholics and all that. Like, that's not me. But in a Japanese person's mind, they're going, this 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 religion that you say Christianity, they went to the Middle East and killed a bunch of people in the name of religion. You have to be able to answer that. How are you going to answer that? How are you going to take care of that? You got to answer that. Another one, American Christianity, and I think this is where I'm going to lose some of you. Japanese people have a very peaceful, they avoid a lot of conflict. I mean, there's shouting matches in politics, but it's nowhere near the extreme. And over here, we see the American political situation. We see the current president, and he is not viewed favorably here at all. The people see the legal issues that he's involved in. They see the scandals. And then they see a bunch of Christians, evangelical Christians, rallying behind him and saying that, man, this guy, he's the best. And they go, wait a second. And even here on the media in Japan, they talk about how the religious, the Christian groups are very much pro Republican and these people that are in office right now. And that becomes a very different understanding. Like, you're Christians, and you say this, but then you support somebody who lives this kind of lifestyle. That's what it looks like to us. I'm not sure I agree with that. Now, I don't care what your stance is on Trump, but I'm just saying that's how they view Christians, and that's how they see Christianity. And they have questions. They have genuine questions about all of this. So what are you going to say? What are you going to say? Because they're going to say, how is this going? I've got somebody calling me. All right. Now, the other thing that you're going to have to provide a defense for is distinguishing your beliefs from orthodox beliefs, orthodox Christian beliefs from cults and unorthodox Christian beliefs. So a lot of people, when they hear Christian, I've been asked if I'm a Jehovah's Witness before, because in the media, in the world, in Japan, Jehovah's Witnesses are considered a Christian sect. Most of us who are followers of Jesus would not believe that, and we do not believe they're Christian because they don't believe Jesus is God. Okay, so there's a very big line there that we have to draw. But to the average Japanese person, they're like, you refuse blood transfusions and kill people? That's what people hear. And that's their assumption. That's their base that they're coming from. So you have to be very, very careful. So why are they wrong? And how are you going to approach it? Now, I've met people who are like, yeah, actually, when I was a kid, I went to a JW, well, they don't call it church, they call it Kingdom Hall. My mom's a JW. So you got to be careful how you talk about people, because if you start getting a sledgehammer and beating them into the ground, then you might end up talking bad about somebody's parents. And you've got to be careful when people ask a question about, so what do you believe about Jehovah's Witnesses? And if you go to town and start bashing them, I'm like, and then they go, well, actually, my mom is that, and she's a good person. Whoa, you just lost all your credibility. So know how to engage without attacking, especially people. Some of these people have been involved in this, and that's just what they've grown up in. So please, please, please be careful how you talk about people and how you engage with their beliefs. I would say often, well, I think there's a lot of people who are very faithful to that, but some of the things that they say contradict what I find in the Bible, and so I can't agree with that. So you've got to be careful how you engage with these conversations. And then finally, please be able to provide a scientific rationale behind what you believe. Because here, we just finished up spring recon, and someone was asking, because we were taking them through the shrine, and they're like, well, what do they believe? What do Japanese people believe about where we came from? And it's, people believe evolution. So they go to the shrines, they believe in spirits, but then they believe in evolution and science. And that's kind of the prevailing narrative taught in schools. So how are you going to say, well, there is another way to view the way the world has come about, and here is why I believe this is true? If you can't provide that, they might have even more questions. Now, there is something that's very concerning to me, and that is, people think in apologetics, and especially in arguing, it's this: if I have the superior argument, then that is going to end everything and win the day. And unfortunately, a superior argument will never be a substitute for living in the Spirit. If you are not walking in the Spirit, living in the Spirit, no matter how good and how airtight your arguments are, you're not going to reach anybody. At the end of the day, people have tough questions, and I understand that, but that is not what brings people to Jesus. An airtight argument is not what brings people to Jesus. It is you living in the Spirit. And a lot of the dialogue that I'm seeing, a lot of the engagement and interaction between people is not I am a follower of Jesus, and I want to share this, and I'm going to be kind and gracious. It's not life lived in the Spirit. It is a superior argument, and I'm going to beat everybody up. Please don't. Please don't. You are really, really hurting our cause. There's Japanese people over here who see that, and they're like, I'm not going to touch them. Those Christian people, they're nuts. And because of that, the next time a Christian actually gets over here and is able to talk to them, you've probably taken them further away from Jesus, and there's going to be even more time needed to build up trust to engage in gospel conversations. So please, please, for the love of God, stop. So we see that a lot of times, even in the Bible, people coming to Jesus and following Jesus is a process. It's not this one-time conversation or argument. So for example, you look at Jesus, John the Baptist is baptizing people, and then he points to Jesus and says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And then Peter and some others, they follow him. But it's not till later that Jesus, he gets in the boat, he's teaching people, and then he does a miracle, and then Peter's like, whoa, I'm a sinful person, please get away from me. And then Jesus says, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. And then they leave everything. So there's this process, right? But a lot of times we want to win that argument. I'm going to win this argument. And we've got to stop that mentality. If someone's kind of slowing down, or they're like, then you need to know when to stop. We're not saying you compromise the truth or change your beliefs, but maybe they're not ready for that conversation yet. Like, here's why I believe this. And if you're especially getting louder, or if your heart is starting to race a little bit as you're typing comments, that is a key indicator that you need to stop. Now, ask questions of people, especially as you work through this. There was one I was very sad to see how people had engaged on some of our stuff. I thought I was like asking questions, we're having some dialogue, going back and forth, this and that, and then someone else jumps on and says, well, you're stupid, basically. That's not verbatim, but if you knew this, then you wouldn't believe that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, this guy's supposed to be on my side, and he's actually, like, hurting the whole cause. Please stop. So please, please, please be careful. Please help us out by, I'm not saying don't talk, but I'm saying please be careful and choose your words and comment wisely. Engage with it. And the Bible talks about answering a fool according to their folly and not answering a fool according to their folly. And a lot of times we have this, like, I have the superior argument, I just got to put this here for somebody else to see. Be careful. Please, please be careful. Know how to engage, because you're engaging that person, and you're also engaging all the people who are watching. And if the purpose of engaging this content is to later say, I told them what's right, they didn't like it, but I shared the truth with them, you probably didn't get through, and you've heard the cause. So please be careful in how you are reacting online, and don't abuse these defenses that many intelligent, well-meaning Christians have put up. We have some very smart people, even in today's day, who are well-educated and provide a very sound defense for why we believe what we believe and why we believe it is true. But please be patient, because a lot of people have not walked through that. They have not walked through that process of understanding and interpreting the data and saying, okay, because at the end of the day, it's not the pure information that converts people, it's faith. And faith is a spiritual thing. So reasoning, arguments, logic, nothing wrong with that, but logic doesn't always mesh well when it's faith. There's a reasonable explanation for why we believe what we believe. But Jesus coming back from the dead, that's not logical, but it takes faith. So pray, live in the Spirit, and don't worry about having the superior argument all the time. Let your light shine, and not your superior argument. That's all I have to say about this today, because we've gone about 30 minutes, but please don't abuse apologetics. It's a defense, not an offense. Please be careful, especially when you're talking to people from another culture, because you might actually be talking past each other and misunderstanding each other. Ask a lot of questions to get to the root of understanding that person, what that person believes, what that person thinks, and then maybe share a little bit of truth, say a prayer, and go make some friends and tell them about Jesus. Thanks, guys. If you've got any questions or comments, then please drop those in. We have summer recon coming up in June. Some of you have already been asking about next year. If everything goes well, I'm actually going to be in the States this year, later this year. And we are actually talking about doing some regional, like, one-day get-togethers. There's a few areas that we're looking at, but if that's something that you might be interested in to host in a city near you, one, I need to know if you can get some people there. Do you know anybody who would come? And two, which city should we do it in? If you would maybe let us know, shoot us a DM, an email, or drop it in the comments. And then we would love to maybe get connected in person as well. Awesome. Thanks, guys. And if you are praying about Japan, be praying for God to send more people here. All right. Thanks. And shoot us a DM with that info. See ya.